So this is a video that's going to be about agencies and my experience using agencies to get guitar students. So when I first started off teaching guitar quite a while ago now, I thought it'd be, I had no idea how to advertise for guitar students. So I thought, obvious answer, I'll sign up with some agencies and maybe they can get me some students. Over the years, I've used 4 of them. 3 of them were pretty bad. One of them was all right. But if you want a spoiler for the end of the video, the best solution is probably going to be to get your own students yourself. So let's have a quick rundown of the agencies I used. So the first one I used, it advertised itself as a sort of franchise sort of affair. You would get a listing on their website and you could put your photo and your contact information. They'd put that up on the website and they'd send you a couple of kind of riffs and things that were tabbed out, not very professionally, just using kind of Courier New font on a Word document sort of thing. But I guess, I had no idea what I was doing, just getting started. It was all right, maybe. So I got maybe 1 or 2 students from them. It wasn't very, very helpful. And I eventually cancelled my subscription because I think I was paying to be a member of that agency. The idea was you pay to join it and then you pay a flat rate subscription and you could keep any students you got and charge what you wanted. Anyway, so I tried it out. Didn't really work very well, so I stopped. About a year later, I was Googling my name just to see what people were saying, what sort of results would come up, and I saw this agency come up, and they still had my listing on their website, even though I was no longer a member. So when people were searching for guitar lessons in my area, this website with this agency was coming up because of my listing on it. So I phoned them up and didn't tell them who I was and said, "Oh, hey, I just saw this on the website, I'm interested in lessons." And what they were doing was they said they were taking inquiries for me, saying that I was busy, and then taking the inquiries and giving them to someone else. Well, I wasn't very happy about them using my name and my photos and my address and my phone number for this, so I sent them an email to say, "Please, can you stop?" And this was ignored until I eventually had to get a lawyer to email them and tell them to stop mucking about, and eventually they took it down. So that was a pretty shambolic and annoying. I didn't even get very many students from it. Useless service. Anyway, so that was the first one. The second one, this was a pro-tactic teaching agency, so they would get you students and I'd have to be travelling literally all over London to go to different students. So when I account for my travel time, I was earning peanuts. But again, I didn't know how to advertise for myself at the time, so I didn't really have much option. I was teaching a family with 3 kids from this agency, which was quite good. So I could go there for about 2 hours and get a ton of teaching done and then come home again. So the travel almost made it worth it. Anyway, these kids were, just kind of brats really, didn't really practice very much. They would just buck about in the lessons and it wasn't really very fun to teach. Eventually I just got fed up with it and said to the agency, "Look, I'm not doing this anymore." So that was that. And then the following week, got a very angry call from their mum asking where I was and why I hadn't turned up for lessons. So it turned out I'd cancelled with the agency, but they hadn't bothered to get in contact with the parents and say that I was no longer going to come to teach them. So quite poor organisation there, which ends up with me having to deal with an angry mum. The next agency I used they're okay. They got me a few local students. I was still driving around quite a bit. Now, if you're driving to students' houses, you have to account for that time in your hourly rate. So if you're charging a normal local rate, let's say you're charging $40 for a half-hour lesson. So if you've got 2 back-to-back students, that's $80 an hour. But if you're travelling between students, you're probably going to find there's 15 minutes of travel time quite easily. Maybe some days there's bad traffic, so it throws your schedule completely out. It's not great. So if you've got a little bit of travel time as well, that can quickly decrease what you're making by, what's that going to be, a third? So you're making, rather than making $40 for half an hour, it's really $40 for half an hour plus 15 minutes of travel time. So it's quite a significant cut to what you're making when you work it out like that. And you've got to account for the cost of your transport. So the cost of your car and your fuel and the car's maintenance costs throughout the year all has to be accounted for in that. And that can very quickly, once you add up the costs from that time and from the time and the travel costs, you can easily find your hourly rate being almost halved. So not a great situation. No fault of the agencies for that, that's just how they work. And they got me a few students, that was cool, and that was nice. The last agency I used was, I only got one student from them, I think, was it two? But this was just during COVID, and they phoned me up and said that they're having some inquiries coming through from the area I was in. Would I be willing to partner up with the agency and take them on? So I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And COVID happened, everyone goes to online, and then the agency in this case was handling the payments and paying me, and they started paying me less after going online. So I said to them, what's up with this? The agency said, oh, well, we charge less for online lessons. So I said, well, you can charge whatever you want, but you agreed to pay me a certain amount per lesson, and at no point did I agree to take a pay cut for charging for the lesson being in person or online. And they weren't, well, they got very upset after I called them dishonest. And I guess they didn't like that somebody was actually willing to stand up to them and call them dishonest. Anyway, that relationship did not last very long. So, kind of what's the takeaway from this? So, well, firstly, why did these problems come? Why is it I think agencies aren't great? So, firstly, the communication becomes more difficult because you've got a third party you're quite often communicating through. So the agency is often going to handle payments, scheduling, and communication with the student or the parent, and via the teacher. They're kind of managing the relationship, which just makes everything unnecessarily difficult. Because if you want to change something, or if the parent or the student wants to change something, everything is being shuffled back and forth via the agency. A bit annoying. Not all agencies work like that, but some of them do. So that's the first thing, it'd be a bit annoying. The second thing is if the agency controls the payments, like in that last situation, they can just change things, and it can be very difficult to get your money. Another thing that can be, difficult with agencies is it can be difficult to get a full schedule if you're working with an agency. Why is that? The agency wants to provide as much flexibility and as many options as possible to the student, which means having lots of teachers, or as many teachers they can possibly get on their books. The agency isn't interested in having teachers being busy, they're interested in having lots of students. So the way they can get as many students as possible is to offer the students as many options as possible by having loads of teachers, which is not great for you. I'm sure there's probably some success stories from agencies. Maybe when the agency started out, the first few teachers they got quite busy, but I don't know. I don't think they're a great solution. So if you're thinking about using an agency to get students, I would say don't waste your time. Instead, just learn how to do advertising and marketing properly. It's not too difficult. There's only a handful of things you really need to be doing, just using website, Google, Facebook ads, things like that. And you can very quickly get yourself 20, 30, maybe even more students within 3 or 4 months. So that's what I would recommend doing rather than using agencies.